European economy is about to get its pulse checked. We could hear it's getting back in shape or that it's still reeling from the financial heart attack it suffered in 2008. On Sunday, the European Central Bank will publish the results of its so-called stress tests in which the health of all 130 of the region's banks are measured. For months, officials have pored over their balance sheets to answer one determining question: would a given bank survive a 2-year financial shock? According to early reports, as many as 25 of those banks have failed the test. It's not clear which ones yet. Reports suggest none are from Germany or France, though some are reportedly Italian. What we do know is that they'll have until November to come up with a plan to inject more capital and 9 months to get their hands on that cash. The whole process is aimed at restoring confidence in Europe's banking industry, a rather critical goal when the region is starting to hear echoes of another financial crisis. The last word on this goes to Conrad Black. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Does it surprise you when you hear that possibly as many as 25 of the region's banks will fail this test? And I guess, does the test even matter?
It doesn't surprise me, and I guess it matters to a degree, but governments can almost prevent banks from failing. I mean, the casebook was written by the New Deal. I mean, Roosevelt, at one time, the U.S. government in his first several years was the largest shareholder, but preferred generally non-voting shareholder of most of the banks in the country. You can do that. That isn't really the crisis. The banks won't fail. The depositors aren't at risk. But the problems are more profound than that.
And then I think we know the answer. When we say they have 9 months to come up with the cash, we know where the cash will come from.
Of course. It's not going to come from people taking money from under their mattresses and putting them in banks, because no one puts their money under the mattress.
So what does it mean for the governments of Europe, and I guess especially the governments that have the money, and that means especially Germany, that there may be additional capital infusions required or more called upon by the European Central Bank to do more by way of acquiring bad assets, which it's been doing willy-nilly?
Well, there is this tremendous stress between the desire of Germany to maintain the euro and to have a somewhat weakened euro to assist in their exports, without the political pressures at home about the diligent German keeping millions of Greeks and Italians at the beach and on holiday and on benefit. And so the Chancellor has to manage it politically. But there is an underlying economic problem. In Europe, they've paid too much Danegeld to the working class and the small farmers. And the birth rates collapsed so far that there are too few people supporting the whole structure they have.
So we can't afford, we the global community, for Europe to not recover. Is there a chance, we begin to sort of hear rumblings because we're seeing deflationary pressures now in some big economies there. Is there a chance of another crisis, a full-on credit crisis, a seizure of the system?
No, I think not like 2008 at all, because as far as I know, you don't have a subprime crisis. You don't have trillions of absolutely rotten paper floating around. Yeah. But the more profound but less immediate problem is that not enough people in the economy are adding value. I mean, you know, all these people who fill up the skyscrapers in all our great cities, most of them are highly motivated, well qualified, but they don't add value the way a person who puts sheet metal on an automobile chassis does, or someone who drives a combine harvester or something.
One of the things that comes up when we talk about Europe and it's muddling its way through, there's a reason why we said not Germany or France or Italy. I mean, those are the biggest economies. But it has become a conversation about whether this experiment called the Eurozone will work. And more people are saying that it should fail, that this is all evidence that it doesn't work, that you can't have this kind of union without a true union of governments. What's your view? Are we looking at a possible demise of the euro?
I would have thought not. And by the way, I think that they have one regulator for the banks, for the whole area. Uniform standards, that's good. And I don't think any serious person could dispute that that's good. But you have the problem I said earlier. I mean, the Germany and its emulators, you know, the Dutch, the Austrians, the Czechs, the Poles if they want to do it, the Scandinavians if they want to do it, that is a solid block. And they're hard currency countries. And France could be there if it wanted to. It's basically a rich country. But the other Mediterranean countries have never had a hard currency in their history. If you go back to the height of the Roman Empire, they couldn't put out a hard currency and keep it there for 20 years.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit closer to home to a story that you know very well, and that is Post Media. Post Media is reporting its numbers. $50 million is the net loss in the most recent quarter. This Post Media strikes me, certainly maybe the part of it that is the National Post, as the bumblebee principle, right? You can't believe it keeps flying, and there's really no principle upon which it should. What's going on? The understanding is that that paper has never made money. Can they survive?
Yeah, I don't think the National Post is basically the problem. As I just glanced at the numbers that were released today, they have a decline in revenue of $77 million and a decline in expense of 56. The rest, the other ingredients are non-recurring items. But I don't think, and I hesitate to criticize my old friend Paul Godfrey, and I don't want this taken as criticism of him, but I don't think you can fight this war this way. I think you've got to make the product better and raise the cover price. Anyone who buys a newspaper in this country, at least a broadsheet newspaper, today is an ABC1 reader, relatively high income and education. And they don't care, within reason, what the cover price is if they're getting value for money. Yep. So invest in that and they'll go to the newspaper. But instead they keep trimming everywhere. The product is not improving. They can't raise cover prices as they would need to do to make up for advertising problems, and they're not selling the product as an advertising medium. They sort of put their argumentative bets on digital, and digital is in decline.
Do you think there is a way to staunch the bleeding on the advertising side? Because it seems almost you could make the case that that model is dead and we need to find a new way. Maybe it is cover price, but that doesn't seem enough to recoup the costs.
Well, in Britain, the percentage of revenue made up by circulation as opposed to advertising is much higher. And in quality newspapers in Britain, you can still make a good deal of money. I mean, the Telegraph there has half the circulation it had when we had it, but it is still profitable, and you can do it. But I think they have to emphasize quality. Stop being embarrassed about it being a newspaper. People like the editorial function because the flow of information is so overwhelming. You can't read everything or see everything, and you've got to be unapologetic about that. But like any other industry, give the people a good product.